All right, it's time to release this video and also show my face a bit on this one. Um, so I made a demonstration on the dry brush process when starting a painting. It's one of the ways you can start a painting. There's plenty of them out there. I think in a previous video I said I'd make a demo for this, so here it is. It's very long. It's like 2 hours, uh, 2+ hours of footage of me basically doing this stuff in real time. I sped it up a bit, and also I sped up the bits where I'm not talking, so it's basically just small time lapse bits there. No background music this time. Throw on something yourself if you like. Speed it up a bit. It can be a bit long for some viewers, of course, but if you're interested, I hope it's very informative. And yeah, I got permission to use this footage. I made it. I think I finished this painting in June. They gave it to the client, or the commissioner gave it to the recipient at the start of July. And after that, it's kind of been just, uh, you know, sitting on my hard drive because I was taking a bit of a social media break during the summer. And yeah, let's see how this goes. If you like this kind of content, then be sure to let me know. I can make more of this real-time type of stuff. And if you like my time-lapse stuff more, or if you have any topics in mind that you would like me to tackle, then let me know. All right, I hope you enjoyed the video. All right, so I'm gonna start a new painting here today, and this time I'm doing it a little bit differently, where I'm actually filming and talking real time into the microphone. So I was thinking I will kind of make a demonstration on how to start painting by dry brush drawing, which is a handy way of starting because you don't need to use graphite or charcoal and fix those or risk them moving around. And if you're happy with the drawing, you can just leave it to dry and then you're ready to paint the next layer. So what I'm going to use today is raw umber this is by Winsor & Newton. Brand doesn't really matter. You're just drawing. You just want to get some darker pigment on a lighter surface. And as you can see, I've toned my canvas beforehand. This was actually toned with burnt umber and white and wiped out, so there is a bit of transparency and texture to the surface. The surface I'm painting on is an oil-primed linen glued to an aluminium composite panel. And so basically my tools here are raw umber paint, semi-soft brush. This is synthetic mongoose. The brand is Tintoretto. I bought it from Zecchi, Firenze. And a bit of paper towel and a kneaded eraser or kneadable eraser. This is a basic drawing tool. So with this I can create this drawing. So I basically start out by kind of saturating my brush with the paint, and then I just wipe off the excess. You can do it on the palette or you can do it on the paper towel. And the more you wipe, the softer the mark you make will be. So now that my brush is saturated, I can then start actually drawing, and it's just loose placements of the composition at first. And as you can see, hopefully, I'm leaving a mark here. So it's very light, very malleable at this stage, and it's something that's easy to move around. Also, the kind of the softness of the line gives you opportunity to move the line around by erasing it. And since you're having to scrub a little bit, maybe don't use your best soft brushes for this, ones that are somewhat worn out. So I'm using brushes that I used as a student, which have like hundreds of hours of painting on them, so they're already a bit splayed. But yeah, let me just demonstrate a little bit how this actually works. So if you have this smudge here, you can actually use this kneaded eraser to wipe out the paint. And then you just fold the eraser and redo. And from this smudge, you can actually create some fairly sharp lines just by using this fairly dry medium. And as you can see, like my hand is not in oil paint. You're actually using very little paint to do this. So you can then, continue the line however you want. You can create fairly sharp lines if you use less pressure and the sharp edge of the brush here. And this way you can actually draw pretty nice articulated things. And how I would proceed is then, after I create a nice construct by doing this, I can then take more paint, darker value, and really go over with a small brush to refine my drawing then. And I think this is a really good way to start a painting if you want to take your time with the drawing. But so those were just marks that I made. Something to note is that usually when you tone your ground, you can actually still wipe out a bit of the toned ground. I don't know if you can see it here, but in places it might be sticking poorly, or if it hasn't like fully dried, if you're starting the painting like next day after toning. Some of the ground might still come off, as you can see a bit here. It has come off from slight abrasion. I don't know what happened with this panel, but maybe I rubbed it, you know, while moving or something. But it's still nice canvas feel. It's fully coated with primer, so I don't really worry about that. I can actually just go over it and kind of blend it in with this dry stuff now. Yeah, so now it's not so distracting. Okay, so let me just start drawing. These marks were actually made to start the composition. This is a commission piece, so I'm not going to show you the reference here. I think this line is a little bit too low. I'm just starting really rough here. So that's my best guess for now. I'm just looking at shapes really at first, and then angles of these lines I see on the reference. I'm just trying to map out the big proportions. And this may not be very interesting at first, but maybe I'll time-lapse this stage so you can see how I actually work. And to mention, this is one way of approaching a painting. This is not the best way for every situation, but you know, especially for a commission piece, I think this is a great way to approach a painting, because you can get a really accurate drawing. This is how we did all those academic works in Angel Academy, by starting with a construct and then refining the drawing until it was finished. And we could take multiple sessions for the drawing stage. I don't think it was ever done in a single day. The days were divided into 2-3 hour sessions, and then in the evening you could work on your project more. And even including the day session and the evening session, usually you didn't finish the drawing stage. That would mean like 5 hours of drawing and nudging around things. And usually when you come around the next day, you still find errors to fix, and you're happy you didn't kind of rush things, because well, it's honestly easier to fix things at this stage than, you know, at a later stage where you just kind of have already got dried paint on there and you have to rework everything. At this stage, it's just a kneaded eraser and basically a little bit of paint. You don't even need that much for this. So honestly, this is kind of like drawing in charcoal. It's very malleable. You can move things around. I could still wipe everything off if I want to start anew. Maybe I will. I don't know yet. I want to place things first, so I can get a good idea of how it's gonna be, and if the things I'm painting here are gonna look proportionate. So what is slowly forming here is it's a double portrait of a child and a grandpa reading together. And I really like subjects like this because it's not like a full head-on portrait. I like it because it's a real situation. It's from a candid photo the client took. And in the reference, there's a bit of the back of the head cropped, which is unfortunate, but I don't think it really matters in this composition, since it is the subject, yes, but the composition actually works nicely like this, so we're not too worried about that. And here I'm just trying to look for some big proportions that I can use as to kind of anchor the image in place, where I can, like, say the back of the baby's head is like around 3.5 measuring units down here, so I'm gonna place a mark here and see how it fits. And honestly, this is just pushing and pulling things around. Lately I haven't been measuring that much, which I think I should be doing. And here I'm trying to take my time, of course, because this is a portrait commission. Can't really be so loosey-goosey with this one. And you can see I'm occasionally going back to my palette and bringing a bit more color, but what I'm actually doing is I'm going to this pile here, which is like a spread out thin bit of paint, so I don't actually leave much marks when I'm going in here and then going here. That means I'm getting just the right amount of paint for drawing. So I actually have a huge amount of raw umber here for the amount I will need. Maybe once I approach a good construct stage, I will tone in some of the shadows and separate the lights and darks, and using this paint. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I first want to get the linear drawing in place. No sense in toning things before that, because basically it just means I will have to wipe more paint if I mess things up. Here I'm just moving this a little bit. It feels kind of out of proportion, so this is probably not the easiest thing for the camera to pick up, these lighter marks, but we'll see how it goes. I'll try to bump the contrast or something if it's not working that well. Okay, so let me just see. This looks right. It's pretty close. It's called like a construct line, and it's very much the simplest thing you can do. You know, we can try adding the nose here. I usually mark the bottom of the nose and try to go from the edge of the nostril to the tip of the nose. And we can, you know, try marking it here, see how it goes. But this is already going into details basically. So we don't want to do that this early yet. We want to make sure everything is in place before we actually start really fussing with details. Because then you can, you know, reliably, if you start really like putting in an eye or something, it's really annoying if you end up making it really nice and loose painterly. However, you like it a lot after you placed it down, and then you realize you have to move it like by a ½ centimeter, and you just make a huge mess. This especially if you're like painting wet into wet, which means you have a wet layer of oil paint there. And yeah, it can get really messy and, you know, demotivating. Now, I see the relationship between the head of this boy here and the nose is off, so I'm just gonna try nudging the head a little bit first, and we'll see how it works. Yeah, so maybe we'll just draw a slight eye line here, like a brow line, I mean, so it starts looking a little bit more like a face. One thing to mention here is babies' proportions are way different from adult proportions, so I think the back of the head needs to be a little bit higher here. Actually, there's, you know, a bit of the shirt of the grandpa here, kind of the shadow is melding here with the back of the head, so it's kind of hard to actually make a distinction and estimate the real like proportion. And here you can see I actually made a darker line by accident. I took a little bit too much of the paint. I can just kind of soften it like this, and then I can start looking for stuff again. So yeah, I think the nose placement was a bit off, so yeah, this is a better line. I just erased this mark I made. Looking more like a human now. I think the brow here is something fairly important as well. Let's just make a really, really simple like 3-line nose here basically. Let's see how it looks. Here you can see there's a thick line. I can't really tell anything from here. I'll just go in and it's called articulation, where I just make it a little bit nicer. I mean, well, not strictly articulation, but articulation stage would be the place where you actually start really drawing those crisp lines around things, where you like make the final decisions of the placements. So, and final is always relative. You'll fix the painting until the very end. You know, even if painting like 20 layers or something, you're still gonna find things to fix in the final layer. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be painting that layer. So saying final at this stage is ridiculous, but you know, the final stage of your drawing the place where you start to actually go into the color or underpainting. So the shape of the head is really important for likeness. This distance here is way too little. The nose is actually a little bit longer, so I have to move things around a bit. And here it's not a strict profile actually, this position of the head. So there's a little bit of the other eye showing, well, basically just the upper eyelid. And as I said, that is really detailed stuff. It's not something we want to mess around with at this point. It's looking a bit weird because we kind of unified the, well, made the bridge of the nose continue all the way towards the forehead, which it doesn't really do. So that was distracting. So I just took it out there. And yeah, so the brow line is kind of going here. Talking about brow line, it's a kind of rhythm that connects the, well, the brows together. And there are some rhythms like this. You know, the basic structure of the head is usually where you block it in by, you know, placing a kind of circle, you know, then find the mask shape of the face according to your model, and then, you know, you place the brow line, place the underside of the nose with a straight line, and usually you can then place the underside of the lip, because there's usually a shadow there. So it's kind of something that has been established as a basic thing. And the general kind of proportions that people teach is this underside of the nose is 1/3 of the entire width of the, length of the face up to the hairline. Well, our model is bald, so we can just imagine the hairline would be somewhere here, and the other third would be the brow line. So these would be around thirds. Now, what makes people unique is these proportions change, so they're kind of something you don't want to actually start measuring when you're doing a portrait, but it's something to keep in mind. And these being in similar relations always helps you put things in perspective when the person is watching up or down. But yeah, this is getting a bit abstract because I don't actually use that stuff here so much, so let's just continue on this. So yeah, here I want to push the forehead forward because it's looking a bit too elongated, the head. I know this like looks really ugly at this stage, looks cartoony, like nonsensical, but if you trust your measurements and really practice with this, then you can start actually making good work with this approach. Maybe I'll find a picture I can show of a drawing stage from my school years as an example. And one thing that makes this head look a bit elongated, I think, is because I've kind of made a mark here that's the back of the head, but it's actually way too high. So I should probably, like, in relation to this shirt here, I think there's still like a bit of the neck showing around here. So basically this would be more like the back of the head here. So that was one major thing that was kind of bothering me looking at the whole picture. Now it looks more proportionate, it looks like an adult head. And you know, at this point placing the ear is pretty good, so you can get an idea. The ear is really important in kind of telling the viewer something about the placement of the head. Again, with the general proportions thing, you know, the lower edge of the ear is usually around the same height as the bottom edge of the nose, so I can kind of look for this rhythm line here and place the lower edge of the ear thereabouts. Now, something people don't know is that when people age, the ears and nose keep growing. That's just how it works. So these proportions change with age. One way to make a person look older would be to make the ears and nose slightly larger. And you know, you can see this if you start looking at photos of elderly men. The ears are usually larger than, you know, middle-aged men or young men. As an example, I think in men this especially the nose and ears are kind of more prominent. Maybe it's because men tend to go bald at some point. I mean, a lot of men, not everyone. So these are more noticeable, especially in the ears. Hair doesn't really affect how you see the nose, right? So, but yeah, so this is just a rough placement. I don't know if I'm gonna do a very good job with this because, you know, I'm not used to talking at the same time as as painting, so just see how it goes. I don't even know if I can sync the video properly with this voiceover, since I can't connect the microphone to my Sony a6000 camera. It's an older camera, not really made for stuff like this. I think the video was kind of an afterthought on this device, but yeah, let's make it work somehow. Otherwise, I'm just talking to myself and feeling ridiculous. So here I'm kind of going into more details. I can see in the model the upper lip with mustache is kind of pushing out towards like this, and the edge of the lip kind of goes further down like this. So now we have a bit of a mustache shape here. I'm not going to draw it, it's lighter. The lighting situation in this painting is kind of a little bit tricky, since, you know, actually the light is coming from up here, and we can actually see just there's light here hitting the head, and the baby here, it's kind of around this area. You will see it in a moment when I start actually placing these light and dark patterns more strictly. Yeah, but yeah, I'll just take this off for now because it just kind of interferes. So yeah, now this head is starting to actually look like a person somewhat. Maybe something we should add is the kind of the back of the nostril here. And here you saw I made just a huge dark mark there. We don't want that at this stage. That kind of color would be reserved for the articulation stage. Yeah, then let's make it a little bit less sharp so it's not bothering us that much. At this stage, if everything is soft and fuzzy and you make a very soft, fuzzy and light, let's say, and you make a very dark mark, that mark just starts screaming for attention and you can't let it go until you kind of fix it. And it can lead sometimes to this kind of cycle where you just make a mark and scrub it off and make a mark, and you just try to work that thing, and it can get really annoying because you can't make it work and look good at that point. And the reason usually for that is you're not making it like the other marks, which is very soft and scrubby. And usually that happens if you start like trying to place an eye here very accurately, and you start drawing eyelashes or the iris of the eye